Being overreactive is childish, and being non-reactive is just as stupid. Also, don't have stupid fights with your wife over stuff you saw on TV. Welcome, it's Watch. You guys are here. This one's a simple one. It's I'm sure everybody in a relationship has got it at one point where your wife watches something on TV or has a friend that has something happen. They have a discussion about the values of it. The guy says some real shit and the girl has a reaction to it. And this is one of those examples. So guys, like, I didn't see it coming. I'm still a noob. I've seen some success. You know, I stopped asking for sex, stopped getting butthurt about rejection, at least not on the outside, and I refused to argue, been batting down shit test after shit test, positive reactions from the wife. I'm by no means in the clear, and I thought I knew there was going to be setbacks. So being quiet and just shutting up if I don't know what to say has been my best friend. Here's what happens. Came home from work, things were great. She greeted me with a truck and a kiss, or in the truck with a kiss, asked me about my day, very interested in a few details I had closed, which would be financially beneficial to the family. I provide well financially and have for the last 3 years. She's pleasant to be around and watched my daughter and her friend play in the yard. And then she brought up some news story later that day about a woman who got put in jail because she brainwashed her children against the ex, to the point where they told the judge it would be like going to Guantanamo Bay to meet the ex for lunch. And they refused. The dad, right? The judge put the lady in jail over it. My only comment was, man, people need to grow up and not bring their kids into adult matters. She got quiet. I looked over and asked her what was bothering her, and he's like, first mistake. She told me that she has told our daughter a lot of things she doesn't like about me. My brain immediately thinks of all the times my daughter has told me she doesn't like me or doesn't love me, just out of the blue. Never bothered me besides resolving to spend more time with her to try and repair what was happening. And I replied, do you think that's a good idea? And she goes, no. All right. He's like, okay, just don't do that anymore. She's like, all right. That was it. I was mad, but I've been reading The Art of the Stoic and I found some value for it in my personality that really needs a lot of improvement. We move on. She's quiet the rest of the day and I just let it be. Today, she calls and starts laying out to me how I'm being controlling and I'm an asshole, and she will put it up and demands to know where I've been reading this stuff. I'm just telling her I'm making changes. I'm fixing myself. Don't worry about it. She demands to know more and he's like, no. She continues to yell on the phone as he's holding himself together. She says she's taken our daughter to her parents, which I'm like, no. I've already kicked the mother out of the house. She's not supposed to see the kids. She's that bad. And like, end of story. I'm not going to discuss this anymore. She says, you can't control me. You need to stop what you're doing right now. I want my husband back. He's like, no, I'm making changes and I'm going to continue. Doesn't matter what happens. Well, what if that means I leave you and take your daughter? You're like, well, that would suck. It's not going to happen, but you're free to do whatever you like. And you won't get my daughter. She's like, what? You would leave me? I can't believe you would say that. She's like, I didn't want it to come to that, but I'm done with being unhappy. First off, I got to stop here. Don't ever do this on the phone. Again, if it's important, it's face-to-face important. Stop having fights over texts and emails and phone calls. Jesus. The guy had just finished telling you how if he didn't know how to deal with the situation, shut the fuck up was like his best strategy. And right here is exactly where he should have used it. Exactly. Anyways, we talked a few more minutes, how she needed to slow down, spend some time apart, doing other things. We're not separating, but she wants to take a step back. I'm like, yeah, do what you need to do. And she seems to be in shock about how casual he was about it. So my question is, how do I slow this down? It's moving fast, and I'm not equipped to handle it at its pace. Yeah. So, one of those things, this is my thoughts before we get into it. Whenever you read a field report from a guy, and he uses the words stoic, calmly, or butthurt, as in I'm not any of those things, or I am stoic, you can already tell it's not going to happen. I guarantee you read through the field report, he will show examples of not doing any of them. It's an example of projection. The idea is he wants to feel these things, and so he has a perception problem where he can't actually see him not doing them, so he just projects that onto other people. Same as like that Simpsons episode where Homer was looking in the mirror and then all he saw was like pecs and he made him dance. Yeah. So Jack chimes in, and this is like an isolation thing, which is kind of good because Jack took a more, long-term approach, because this is one of those same guys, deleted his account, moved on, but he had like 5 or 6 posts beforehand, and these are all kind of like, he's gonna give you like a broader view. But on this one, the big takeaways is, one, if it's important, like he's basically talking about divorce and parental alienation on the fucking phone. Like, don't. You sound bothered. Wait till I get home, we'll talk about it then. Okay? Yeah. And then you get there, that gives you A, a cooling off period where people aren't yelling at each other, and B, body language. It's amazing what can be changed when you just have a little bit of body language in a conversation. Secondly, when you guys get that random question out of nowhere, like I watched something on TV, or I had a dream, or I have a friend that does something, she's testing you. She's testing you to see how you react to something. Now, guaranteed on this one, she's been bad-mouthing dad to the kid for a long time, and she feels bad about it. So she tells him a story. Oh, I saw it on the news. This guy's mom treated the dad so badly that they put her in jail. What do you think of that? And the guy's like, that chick's an idiot. And she goes, I used to do that. And now that's where you kind of understand that when a girl brings up these random scenarios, they're basically asking if you're going to judge them for doing stuff. This is why sometimes girls have slutty thoughts. I don't know. You may have heard this before. They do. Like maybe they're interested in a threesome with you and some other girl. Maybe they want to wear lingerie and they've been kind of prudish most of your relationship. Maybe they want to try anal for the first time, but they're afraid of bringing it up. And so they'll always bring up stories, things they saw in the news, or their friend was doing this stuff, and to see how you react. And a lot of guys respond by acting all prudish. Oh, well, your friend Cynthia's a whore. And here's what the girl hears. If I try to be this sexually promiscuous with him, he's going to treat me like a slut, and so I better act more prudish. And so a lot of guys don't realize then what they're doing is they're sabotaging their own relationship by acting this way, by treating, it's a Madonna whore complex thing. But yeah, so the takeaway from this is whenever you have these random hypothetical conversations, realize the girl is just adding a degree of separation from her bad behavior to see your reaction. And I would only suggest there, don't be outwardly judgmental, because the instant you are, they will clam right up. What you want now is honesty and forthright communication. And the only way that happens is if she feels safe. And the only way she feels safe is if you quietly judge and not outwardly judge. Now, depending on what information you get from that, you can do whatever you like, but just don't act like a chode. Anyways, back to this one. So Jack's like, most of the guys are going to talk about this in isolation and congratulate you on outcome independence in the face of your wife's threats. I was going to do the same. But then I read through some of your older stuff, and some observations I have stand out. So he's asking about, how do I slow this down? He's like, so why do you want to slow this down, champ? I checked a week ago, and you were bragging about, shut the fuck up and watch your hamster do burnouts. It kicks in so fast. Isn't that what you wanted? You were puffing your chest, the mighty alpha, snickering as her hamster runs off ragged, rubbing your wife's complete lack of options in her face, and then running here to brag about it? You're a tough guy a week ago. What changed? When I read your previous post, I rolled my eyes and thought, yep, another 2-week warrior, and he's going to be here in a week asking, I just got a nuclear shit test, am I doing something wrong? But everybody was too busy high-fiving you in the comments, just like they're mostly doing here. So yeah, you need to be less rock and more oak. And I'll get into what that means in a sec. Your last post made a comment about her hamster needing a hip replacement. Well, yeah, that's better than let the hamster steamroll you. But you're not making the hamster work for you. You're just sitting in the other room watching it run out of control and wondering why your wife is so distressed. So the 3 things here, rocks, oaks, and hamsters. Hamster is just a euphemism for a girl's emotions, how they kind of just run out of control, like spiraling. You ever say that, hey, lady, you're spiraling? That's what the hamster is. It's like a hamster, keeps running in the wheel, keeps going faster, but it's not going anywhere. The oak is the idea of managing to be adequately reactive. Think of like an oak tree. The wind blows through, a hurricane blows through it. Yeah, the leaves brush so it acknowledges the wind is there, and that's like a metaphor for empathy. But it doesn't uproot, it doesn't change, it doesn't move, and that's frame. A rock, on the other hand, just non-reactive. And this is where you get that lack of empathy, the lack of dealing with comfort tests, the lack of dealing with shit tests. You're basically just sitting there taking punches and being non-reactive to it. That's not frame. That's just being autistic. And that's the idea, is this guy keeps just like not reacting to anything. And so she keeps escalating to more and more extreme statements and behaviors. And even though he's freaking out on the inside, he's not giving any indication that any of this is sinking in. And that's why it's escalating. So just a little bit of oak and a little less rock. And you can find that these fights that constantly get worse and worse and worse just won't.
I've transformed. I'm charming. I'm good looking and in shape, but bored. I need something to do next. Another challenge to conquer. Please give it to me.
Because most of the time, she's not trying to be a bitch. She's trying to get a reaction. And if you can give a reaction in a measured way, based on behavior that you would prefer to see versus stuff you wouldn't prefer to see, then you're not going to get these child abandonment threats, you know? Anyways, your wife seems like an anxious person. Anxious people often communicate their anxiety through anger, and that's why it's not enough to be the rock. A rock can withstand the anger, but she's still left with the anxiety. You'll have a much less confrontational marriage if you respond in a way that does not just deflect her anger, but also deflects the anxiety. Quick example. You manage taking over the finances. A rock move is saying, okay, woman, I make the money, I'm going to handle the bills, don't worry your pretty little head about that anymore. An oak move is like, all right, it's time to get serious about our finances. I've put together the financial plan for short, medium, long term. This is the money we need to save for a house, for whatever. This is how much left over for, spending. I'm going to take my paycheck, set up some plan where the money's allocated per plan, and you're only going to have access to the discretionary income. So you put in the work for a plan that included your family, included her, and you're taking the lead on executing it. Takes a lot less hamster with that approach, which makes things easier. Winning shit tests as a rock can sometimes leave your wife with lingering resentment. Let's say you feel you deserve a raise at work. Storm in the boss's office, tell him about how undercompensated you are, you're pissed, and you're going to quit if you don't get a raise. But realistically, you can't quit. You need the income from the job. In one scenario, your boss says, well, if you quit, I can't control that. I don't want you to quit, but if you do, send me your letter of resignation by the end of today. Now, your only move, knowing you can't actually quit because you need the paycheck, is to sheepishly exit his office and go back to work. You can't quit. You have to keep working. But you're going to have some lingering resentment. You definitely won't be motivated to be a hard worker and feel appreciated by your boss or the company. In the other scenario, your boss says, do you want to quit? Of course not. We hired you for a reason. We don't want you to quit, and I don't think you want to quit either. But you're asking me for a raise I can't give you. So if you do insist on quitting, I can't do much about that. Now, scenario 2 is going to leave you feeling better about things. But in both, the boss didn't give you a raise. But in scenario 2, you go back to work, probably happier. You could still quit, but would you really want? But you actually want to keep working. So he gets back to their conversation and how they're having too much of it. He's like, don't kid yourself. Your wife, perhaps more than most of our wives here, is giving you shit tests that are very easy for you to win. And that's why she's calling you controlling. You're probably not being controlling. She just doesn't really have any winning moves she can play. And any response on your end that isn't sheer capitulation, she just has to live with it. You're not being controlling, but she has no control. So when she says you can't control me, what she's really saying is you need to stop rubbing my nose in the fact that I have no control. And that's your problem as a rock. You just kind of keep rubbing her face in it over and over and over again, like it's a revenge fantasy. Cliched as it sounds, she is, figuratively speaking, stuck between a rock and a hard place. That means she'll never come to the conclusion that she could be sweet or she could be a bitch. I like my husband the way he responds when I'm sweet, and my family functions better, so I could do that, but I'd rather be sweet. Instead, she just keeps coming to the conclusion that I could be sweet or a bitch, although if I'm a bitch, then my husband just reacts like an even bigger asshole. So I can't be a bitch, I guess I'll have to be sweet. Can't have versus could and want. Do you see this? Parallels with the raise example. So when you're like, yeah, the wife asked you what books you were reading and you said, I'm making changes to improve myself and that's going to continue no matter what. Compare that versus, I want more out of my life and you and our daughter are part of that life. I want to be 95 years old, hosting a Christmas Eve party with our great-grandchildren. And we can't do that if you're not making the right choices with our health and money. Now, if that's controlling, then maybe we do have different ideas about what we want in our future, and I can't do anything about that. She'd probably say something like, oh, I'd want those things too. I just don't understand why you have to be so mean about it. Well, those things take work. They take discipline. So yeah, discipline isn't always rainbows and sunshine. I want you to trust me. I want you to follow me. Maybe I haven't been clear about this, and that's why I seem mean, but I can't stop you if you don't want to follow my lead. By the way, if you want to immediately reconcile with your wife today, go see her and say this stuff. I would pretty much guarantee she'll melt in your arms and have some awesome makeup sex. Which is true. Sometimes just like a little bit of a good delivery, a little bit of silver tongue makes all the difference. He's like, yeah, so time to oak up, man. Your overall problem is you're viewing shit chests as you just beating her. Shut the fuck up works, but you don't need to do it every time. Your value should be such that you can just spare a little bit of empathy, a little bit of comfort now and again. I'll give you another example. And he was talking about an older post of his. Well, it was sex time this evening, and she suddenly goes dark on me and says she can't get that blonde off her mind. I tell her, whatever, that blonde is envying you right now because you get to have me tonight. She says she's gone to bed, and I tell her she's being childish, and that other blonde chick is keeping her from taking care of her husband. She's gone. In other words, they saw some girl who showed some interest in him, and he played it off, and he tried to be cocky and funny about it. It's like, you could say something like, does that blonde know how to fix my favorite cocktail? Or something else sweet that your wife actually does do and you genuinely appreciate. Again, the key word is the comparison that your wife does things you consider more special than just a set of tits. And that will earn, anything else will earn you more contempt. But by tying her attraction to her behavior as a positive reinforcement you can do here, you can turn some shit tests into a response that will cause your wife to think and act sweet by getting comfort. You're not watching the hamster and laughing, you're making it work for you. So some final thoughts on this. Yeah, the concepts he's talking about here, like obviously passing some comfort test is good. The difference between being an oak and being stoic or non-reactive. But handling, it's a simple concept. We call it rewarding good behavior, not rewarding bad behavior. And in this case, he's not very good at it because he doesn't know what good behavior is. And she may not know what good behavior is. So a lot of the times you kind of have to lead them on with the story. And in this case, it was some girl that was showing interest in him and she was jealous. It's like, oh, so what do you deal with that blonde? He goes, dude, the blonde doesn't know how to make a good martini like you. I'll even use a personal example in mind. My girls always ask me, he's like, why do you love me? I'm like, it's because you can drywall. And she always thinks it's funny. And you guys think it's funny. It's like, oh, it's hilarious. Girl doing macho work. And I'm like, no, it just means like other girls are there and other girls are attractive and other girls may be younger or richer or whatever. But it's like you do things that people just don't do. You do things that I appreciate that no girl would even think to do. And when you say little things like that, it lets them know that it's not just show up, bring beer, be hot. There's behaviors, and girls eat that shit up. They love it. They love the idea that there's something about them that's special. And if it can be tied to the way they act, then yeah, they're going to be encouraged to act that more way. Wow, he acts sweet. He acts comforting. He has more great behaviors when I act sweet and when I act submissive. So as I act more submissive, he acts better towards me. So I act more submissive, so he acts better towards me. And you see how the feedback loop is going here? None of this works, by the way, if you don't have the adequate amount of attraction or like alpha behaviors in there. Like if she doesn't find you sexually attractive, if you're not building up any anxiety, then none of this stuff matters. This is how dead bedrooms happen, where they forget about the attraction part first. But, and again, this is a more advanced topic, so if your first weekend, it's not going to help you much, but if you're one of those guys that you got good push-pull, you got good game, you're attractive, you got, all the things you need for a healthy sex life, but your problem is dealing with fighting and argumentative stuff and trust issues and that, these little bits of beta and these little bits of comfort go a long way into making that stuff more sustainable so you don't have to have massive blowout fights once a week and then have crazy makeup sex the next day and then 2 more weeks of massive horrible fights in order to have makeup sex again a week later. There's a much more sustainable way to make this stuff. And ideally, you can get a guy like this there fairly quickly. And I don't know where you are in your relationships. Do you have one? Do you want one? Are you in one? Are you fixing it? Whatever. But like, you can do this. I believe in you. Anyways, have fun with that, guys.